welcome back to Balancing Act, living life in harmony. Linda Wilson and myself are your hosts. Linda's my partner in crime, collaborator. I don't know, we have several different names for each other. We are in different parts of the country. We really love what we do, but today we're talking some more about Linda's company, Loving Life's Journey. She is a coach and does a lot with self-care. But we left off talking about the Grand Canyon and some of your, that was one of your favorite places, and 9 feet of snow.
You know, that was amazing because you just never hear people talk about
No.
the Grand Canyon. You think it's Arizona, it's hot, it's
Yep.
desert, but the rim is at 9,000 feet.
Yeah.
So the year we went, we were in Vegas and we decided to take a day trip over.
Okay.
And we were checking into it, and the guy said, "Well, let me make sure the park's open." I said, "What do you mean?" And he says, "Well, they had a ton of snow." He said, "So we have to make sure that they were able, that some of it's melted and they've been able to clear it so you can get in, because the tour buses wouldn't take us in otherwise."
Right.
But, I had never even thought of snow in the Grand Canyon. It just didn't trigger. And it was stunning and it was beautiful. And I love all 4 seasons. So one of my other favorite trips was the cruise to Alaska.
Oh.
I mean, up there, bald eagles are like crows. Oh my heavens, everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the air there is so clear. We did the thing where we were on the ship and we went up towards I think we went to St. Mary's Glacier. And it looks like you're right there. And they're like, "Oh no, you're miles away."
Yeah.
But the air is so clear.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like it's right in front of you. And
right.
We even saw a calve a piece off, which was amazing, but we don't want that to happen too often because that means it's too warm and the glacier is melting. Mm-hmm. And that was a number of years ago. But anyway, so stunningly beautiful. Mm-hmm. And I think what I loved best about being a photographer was being out in nature and catching all that stunning beauty.
Mm-hmm.
And, living in Colorado, I even got to take pictures of moose.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we were talking off the air here, you were also in the era of photography where there was a lot of film to be developed?
I did. My dad should have been a photographer. I think that's what he really wanted to do. He was a very gifted photographer, but back then that wasn't considered, it was a hobby. That wasn't a
right.
And so he passed his love of photography down to my brother and down to me. And I think even my younger brother and sister enjoy it. But as he got a new camera, my older brother got the old camera. They would filter down. And so for as long as I could remember, I've had cameras. I've taken pictures of everything. And so when it was about the time I met Paul. He was with Bob Proctor at the time, and I was at a seminar in Scottsdale, and he was there. And I was really wanting to do photography full time. And he helped me make that decision and make that transition. But it was just a dream come true. I mean, now the hard part is when you take that thing that you love and you make it your business, you have to remember that it's more than just doing the part of it that you love.
Right.
At least at the beginning.
Right.
So I wasn't prepared. I mean, I did the classes with the Small Business Administration, did all of those things. And none of them talked about how you're going to spend more time doing accounts receivable, accounts payable, marketing, all of that, more than the part of your business that you love.
Right.
This was in the early 2000s, and everybody was talking about how wonderful it is to be your own employee and how easy
Hmm.
to do everything yourself without telling you what everything is. And for the first 2 years, I was just in heaven because I was just taking pictures and I was
Hmm.
marketing. I wasn't making a dime,
Hmm. Right. Right.
right? Everybody's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, why don't you come do this for free? It's good exposure."
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
would because I was a people pleaser. But the thing was, is I was living, breathing, and dying photography.
Hmm.
And that was so fulfilling. And then after a while, it was like, okay, well, now I got to make some money from it. And to this day, marketing is not my niche.
Hmm.
I know how to do it. I don't enjoy doing it. I would much prefer someone else to do it for me.
Hmm.
Um, Same with my books and my accounting, right? Um, but the thing is I wouldn't do anything different because for that 5 years, I got to live in the pure joy of doing exactly
Hmm.
what I felt I was supposed to be doing. And then when the health things hit and that changed, I lost my direction.
Hmm.
And I don't think it was just because, like with many of us, when you think about people when they get laid off or they have to retire, they invested so much of themselves into what they did for a living.
Hmm. Right.
And suddenly I couldn't do that anymore. And because of my health, I couldn't do the things I did before
Hmm.
because those required me to do things that I couldn't do anymore. Um, and I felt completely lost and disenfranchised. I had built my identity around being a photographer.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, one of the blessings of being a photographer is I can look at things from a lot of different angles.
Right. Right.
And so sometimes that's difficult because when there's arguments and things, I can see all sides.
Hmm.
I get it. Um, that makes me
And you can probably argue either side you want to.
I can and I can mediate. Because I do get it. I do get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But what that's allowed now that I can't do the photography anymore because you don't think about it, but when you've got something up to your eye,
Yeah.
and that's the way, I'm still old fashioned enough, even though my camera has the screen and everything, I prefer to do it here.
Yeah.
And so then that puts a lot of strain on that one eye.
Hmm.
And I found that I was getting double vision. And even after I took the camera down away from my face, sometimes it was 15, 20 minutes before I could see clearly. And
Wow.
when I'm doing shoots just for me, no big deal. If I'm doing an event, if I'm doing family portraits, if I'm doing something for someone else, that's not an option,
Right. Right.
right? So very reluctantly, I let that go. And then my identity went with it. And
Mm, yeah. So you glanced over real quick the health
yeah,
issues,
right, right.
and that put you down for a little while, right?
Oh, that's put me down on and off for quite some time. The health issues put me down for several months. And then, it's so stupid, but I had an aortic dissection, which, if any of you remember John Ritter from Three's Company, that's what killed him. And this was in 2011. So I was very blessed because I was not alone. I was with a group of people, and someone recognized I was having trouble and called an ambulance. Um, a lot of times people don't have that. I
Hmm.
read a story about a lady who was driving when she dissected
Hmm.
and managed to get herself. She thought she was having a heart attack. It went all the way down her leg, but she was driving and she managed to get herself to the hospital.
Mm.
And we're like, we don't know how you got here because it went down her right leg. Um, there are people that when it happens, it just, you know,
Right.
it wasn't super easy to diagnose because it presents as a number of things. And so I had the surgery, they repaired it. They said, oh, your heart's pristine because it's not a heart thing, it's an aorta thing. And so I went right back to work.
Mhm. Probably too soon.
I did wait the 6 weeks, but I went right back to doing all the things I had been doing before because they didn't tell me I couldn't.
Yeah.
They said 10 pounds until you're healed. But so I'm carrying all this stuff around my neck. I'm doing all this, and I got a huge blood clot across my back from doing that.
Oh.
And so I had to take another 8 weeks off because they had to do stuff to dissolve it.
Mhm.
And then they said, okay, we're seeing an issue where we need to go in and do another repair. So I had another open heart surgery. And in that, they did something, they had to do stuff around the carotid. So now I cannot carry heavy things.
Mm.
And think about it, when you've been any place where you've seen Christian Del Rosario,
Yep.
how many cameras does he have hanging around his neck and
Mhm.
and around the belt and all of that? That's what we did. That's how photographers work.
Yeah.
And so that made that extremely difficult for me to do. Also, in that process, I got a paralyzed vocal cord, and I couldn't talk.
Oh.
Well, I could talk, but it took extreme effort,
Mhm.
and it ended up making me cough, and all of this would open up, and I would,
Yep.
you know, those. I used to laugh at my dad because he was one of those guys. He was always phlegmy, and
Mhm.
I didn't want to sound like that old person making all the phlegmy noises.
Right. Right.
So that was an 18-month deal because it takes a year and a half to determine whether your vocal cord is actually paralyzed or if it's going to come back.
Mhm.
So for 18 months, I fought that, and I couldn't talk without choking and gagging and getting sick. Nobody could hear me, even if I was screaming.
Mm.
Um, the voice activated menus on your phone. Oh my God. I would text Jeff at work and ask him to get on the phone with me so he could do the prompts
Oh.
because it wouldn't hear me. It would hang up
Wow.
on me or just keep asking me to repeat. Even now, my voice isn't super
Mhm.
strong. So anyway, after that, we determined it was paralyzed and I had a little vocal implant put in so I could talk. Well, it's supposed to be super easy, day surgery, right?
Mhm.
I aspirated. So they kept me overnight. I got pneumonia
Oh.
and I died. They had to resuscitate me several times, from what I understand. And in that process of resuscitating me, they had to reintubate me. And evidently, there was a superbug on that equipment and superbugs are things that sterilization doesn't kill.
Mhm.
It's not negligence on the part of the hospital. It's just one of those things. And so for 5 months, I was in ICU isolation, in
Oh
and out
wow.
of consciousness. And this bug systematically went through my body trying to kill every organ.
Mm.
And so when I was awake, I was very isolated. I was contagious. This was before COVID, so I was the contagious one.
Mm.
And I felt like a pariah. Nobody could come in and see me because most of my family and my friends were immunocompromised in some way.
Yep.
And if they came in and caught something from me, it could kill them. And that changed my whole personality. I used to be very outgoing. I
Mhm.
thrived on being in big crowds of people. I loved the energy. That was so overwhelming for me when I came home. And God loved Jeff. He saw me pulling away when I was in the hospital. And they wanted everybody gowned, gloved, masked, the whole thing. And Jeff was kind of like, we're losing her. She's withdrawing. And I had a lot of my nurses and the aides got to where they would just wear the mask and the gloves. And then, and a lot of times if they weren't right in front of me, they'd pull the mask down so I could see their face.
Mhm.
But Jeff was like, she's not getting any skin to skin contact. So he would come in, he'd lean over, he'd kiss me, touch my face, hold my hand,
Mhm.
make sure that I had some of that. And then he would go out and put on down in the gloves. And he says, I'm not masking up. He says, I'm not afraid of what, I'm not worried about
Right.
getting what she's got. He said, she's fading away.
Yeah.
And that brought me back.
Right. Right.
And Jeff, who's not, I mean, neither one of us are medical, but we've had to learn a lot over the years.
Yeah. Right.
but,
Yeah. I know that feeling.
but he's got he had a psychology background, and he saw
Okay.
what was going on. And so he did that. And so then I came home. I was overwhelmed by life. And then I think his body kind of, it's like, okay, I'm alive, I'm home. And then everything in him started falling apart because I think the stress of what he went through with me, right?
Right.
And we see this happen.
Yeah.
So basically I became his driver because he needed daily infusions. He was spending 4 hours a day in the infusion center.
Oh no.
To get albumin and taking it because his stomach was shutting down. And so I would drive him to the infusion center. His work set it up so he could work remotely from there.
Oh wow.
And he wasn't techie, so I would take him to the infusion center, and I would get his computer and everything all set up, and then I'd go run around and take care of what I needed to take care of, do whatever I was working on at the time, and then I'd go pick him up and take him to work, and then I would go pick him up and bring him home. Not that he couldn't drive, but he worked downtown, so it was much easier if I just did the shuttling, because otherwise, by the time he got to work, he'd been parking miles away.
Right.
And who wants to pay for a half a day the same cost as, I mean, it was just ridiculous. So we were there, we went through all of his health things and he was doing better. And then my brother had an aortic dissection.
Wow.
And he was home alone. And it was probably a good 4 or 5 hours before my sister-in-law got home from work and found him. And they got him emergency aid. And he was doing well, and then he just kept stroking. His went more up into the brain.
Yeah.
And after 3 months, we had to let him go. And I went into survivor's guilt because here's my older brother, the rock of the family. He was helping mom and dad with a lot of things that my sister didn't have time to, wasn't able to help with. And he was the strong one. Why did I survive it? And so that kind of put me into depression. And then almost a year to the day later, we lost Jeff. And I checked out for 18 months. I sat on my couch. Somewhere in there, I came across Paul again and signed up for a few things and reached out to him. And then Lydia, my best friend, was getting divorced. And I'm like, you've got a room here, right? Because she didn't know where she was going to go. And I said, duh. So she moved in here and helped me come out of my shell. And then COVID happened. So then we were all locked down. And so having Lydia here as my roommate, I mean, she's my sister from another mister. Our birthdays are not that far apart. She's kind of like a twin. And having her here brought me out of my shell. And she welcomed me back into the world. And now my house is a glorious is a glorious it's like a party. She just gives baskets, so the shred is like confetti.
Yeah.
And her son's getting married in a couple of weeks, and she's not just mom of the groom, but she's the event planner. So
there you go.
The entire downstairs floor, the main floor, is full of things for the wedding.
Oh, okay.
And My car is full of things for the wedding, and the basin is full of things for the wedding. And
Wow.
it's fun. And it's fun. So
Yes, there you go. So I am assuming that somewhere in there you had the epiphany and the light bulb come on for Loving Life's Journey.
it did. What I realized is that I am very blessed to have a support system that most people do not have.
Hmm.
I had family, I had friends, I had this community who all prayed for me.
Hmm.
And the idea behind Living Life's Journey was to pay that forward and be that for people that don't have what I have. Because I know there are a lot of people that have not similar situations, but that are going through some really, really hard times that do not have the support and the love that I have. And I
Yes.
want to do something about that.
Yes, and the empathy that you have for people it really comes through. So folks, we're going to leave you hanging here because we've got to a place now where the next time we're on, we want to talk about Loving Life's Journey and what, who, what, why, where, when, everything, especially the why, and how Linda can help you with what she does. So, Linda, thank you so much for sharing. I know it tears at the heartstrings.
You get used to it after a while.
You do and you don't,
Yeah.
do and you don't. So, thanks again for sharing, folks. This has been Balancing Act with Linda Wilson, Loving Life's Journey. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you again next week. Live intentionally, be very blessed. We'll see
Thanks,
y'all.
guys. Bye.